Welcome to the latest Evershed Sutherland Legal Insights podcast.
Welcome back to the Legislation Matters series. In this podcast, we will discuss interacting with the UK government. My name is Farhanah Mogra, and I'm a newly qualified associate in the commercial team, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Nicolette Sanders. I'm a partner in the government and infrastructure sector here at Evershed Sutherland.
So to start off, I understand that the structure of a government department is crucial for companies aiming to input their views, and it would be great to get a bit of an understanding about who's who in a government department and how it all works.
Thanks, Farhanah. Yeah, absolutely. Really important thing to get your head around. And just drawing on my experience of many years as a lawyer in various different government departments, some of which exist and some of which no longer exist, I can give you a little bit of a overview, a sort of bird's eye view, if you like. Large government departments are usually headed by a Secretary of State, and you listeners will know that from seeing cabinet lists which are published every time there's a reshuffle. And there are some key senior folks, such as the Chancellor, who run the Treasury, for example. And those senior ministers, the Secretaries of State, will be responsible for the overall strategic direction and decision making in a government department. And supporting the Secretary of State will be what are known as junior ministers, who handle specific areas within the department, because otherwise it would be too much for one minister to manage on their own. And they, in turn, are supported by the civil service, who we will come back to in a second, but also special advisors. And special advisors are a strange and hybrid creature in that they are political appointees, but they are actually technically civil servants, and they provide expert political advice for the ministers and assist with development and communication of policy. And they are often the first port of call for civil servants who want to make sure that their advice will land well with ministers, or indeed for external bodies or advisors who want to know what government is thinking or planning. So special advisors work closely with ministers and civil servants and are very much key contact points. The civil service in the UK is distinct from other civil services around the world, for example, the US, in that it is permanent and is politically neutral. And it's one of the oldest civil services in the world, perhaps the blueprint for others, and it provides expertise and policy and administrative support for each department across a whole range of areas. So obviously policy, but also operational matters. There are economists, there are analysts, there's a whole, and lawyers, of course, and there's a whole suite of people who support decision making. Standing back, in terms of who companies should engage with, ministers are the starting point because they are the elected representatives of government and they are the decision makers. But often it is necessary for businesses or people who want to engage with departments to speak to civil servants or special advisors, as they are often they're usually the starting point to get an idea of what a minister will be thinking.
Sounds great. Thank you, Nicolette. And very interesting to hear that the civil service is the first point of contact.
Yes, it is interesting, isn't it? And it's a certain amount of dark arts here involved in terms of working out who the best person is to speak to find out more about what the government is planning or what their ideas might be. And obviously that's something that we do advise our clients on when important policies are being negotiated or put out through legislation.
And in terms of that decision-making process, within the UK government, it can seem opaque as it involves a complex interplay of political, administrative, and advisory processes. Could you provide a little bit more insight into that decision-making process?
Yes, I will. And as you say, it certainly is a complex interplay. When supported by the civil service, advised by the civil service, ministers do develop policy proposals in line with the government's strategic objectives. And those objectives are, case of the current government, would have been set out mostly in the manifesto, or they will be also responding to political events. There's a large proportion of time spent legislating that is responding to things that are going on in the world. And I think great examples of that, you might remember after the financial crisis in 2008, there was some emergency legislation. During COVID, there was also emergency legislation. Those are an example of kind of events dictating what the government has to spend its time on and what happens during legislation. But for the planned proposals, for the kind of thing that's in the manifesto, policy proposal needs to be drafted, it undergoes consultation and scrutiny, and civil servants do provide lots of detailed analysis and advice, which assesses the proposal's feasibility, its costs, its benefits, and all the potential impacts so that ministers have the information that they need to make a proper decision.
And I understand that this phase often involves consultations with stakeholders, experts, and the public to gather diverse perspectives, but we can consider that more later.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's an important part of the process of decision making. But as you say, there is a kind of particular role for that, which we can come back to. And just to develop a little bit more about decision making before any proposal gets announced or before it becomes introduced as legislation into Parliament, is subject to Cabinet collective responsibility, which means that all ministers must support it. And again, at the time of recording this podcast, there's a very interesting debate going on in Parliament in terms of the welfare reforms, where the legislation is due to be subject to an amendment. Who, by the time this podcast is out, who knows what will have happened? But that process will have had government ministers all sign up to it behind the scenes. But then, obviously, they need to persuade MPs to support the legislation during its passage through Parliament. So Cabinet collective responsibility requires that everyone in government supports the proposals that are put out into the public domain, whether through legislation or announcements. And it's supported by a web of behind the scenes processes to assure that the policy or decision has all ministers' approval. And those cabinet committees, as they're known, play a pivotal role in reviewing and approving significant policy decisions. And this means that effectively proposals don't deviate from announcements in manifestos or otherwise strategic objectives.
So, as briefly mentioned earlier, responding to a consultation is a key part of the decision-making process, and it's a key moment for affected companies to influence decision-making and include formal consultations as well as informal approaches. Could you provide a little bit more insight into this consultation process?
So you're absolutely right. Consultations are a vital part of the decision-making process, allowing the government to gather input from a wide range of stakeholders, companies and individuals. And responding to a consultation is your opportunity as a business to make your voice heard. And there are several steps you can take, including staying informed about ongoing consultations relevant to your industry, reviewing consultation documents and drafting responses and legislative proposals. While a consultation process can feel formulaic, government does have to review what you say in a consultation response, even if they do not have to follow it. So it is a golden opportunity to input. And for lawyers, such as ourselves, we're conscious that consultation is governed by public law requirements, which means that government is required to give weight to those views. And certainly consultations is something where we do often support our clients and businesses that we work with.
So, navigating the complexities of government interaction can be challenging. How can we help people who are looking to do this?
So, as Evershed Sutherland, our expertise and experience in government matters, legislation, and government relations can provide valuable support to our clients and to you as listeners. We offer sort of tailored legal and strategic advice on how to engage with government. We can analyse policy proposals, identify the potential impact, and provide evidence-based recommendations to strengthen your position, which is supported by our legal interpretation. And as I just mentioned, we also support with consultation responses, drafting and submitting comprehensive responses, and even draft legislation for responses to government consultations. So your views are clearly communicated and supported. And there's a kind of monitoring and advocacy role that we undertake as well. We can keep you informed about relevant policy developments, provide the legal context, and even advocate on your behalf to ensure that your interests are represented. There's a whole range of ways that we can support you in interacting with government and with legislation and decision making.
Thank you, Nicolette, for your really helpful insights into interacting with government. We are going to be covering more about that process in a couple of articles, and these will be published over the coming weeks. Please do look out for those. We hope you've enjoyed listening to these podcasts, and please do get in touch with us if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Evershed Sutherland Legal Insights podcast.